Ha, Ömerciğim geldin mi? Tamam, hadi buyurun, tamamdır. Görüşmek üzere. Ha, Şeyma Hocam da geldi. Hoş geldiniz Şeyma Hocam, Ömer Hocam. İçin başka kalmadı herhalde değil mi hocalarımızdan?
Şu anda tam.
Tamam. O zaman mikrofon sende. Buyurunuz.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our last session of this workshop. This session will be held in English, and our title is New Trends for International Education, Problems and Solutions. And we have very distinguished names for this session. But firstly, as a part of the organization committee, I would like to warmly welcome you and thank you for your very valuable contributions. Today, Mr. Ahmet Furkan Özyakar will be the reporter of the session from Exeter University, and Professor Önder Kutlu from Necmettin Erbakan University, who is my professor from Selçuklu University between 2003 and 2007, and Professor Branislav Radelic from Necmettin Erbakan University, lecturer Teslime Gökgöl, Konya Technical University, Dr. Şeyma Akın, Necmettin Erbakan University, Dr. Ömer Kavrar from Selçuk University. And I would like to give the speech to Professor Kutlu. 15 minutes, Professor Kutlu. Please enjoy your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Yiğit. It's my pleasure to have with all these our distinguished colleagues, friends, and students today. And is it possible to share my my presentation? I have a PowerPoint presentation. If you allow, yeah. I think, yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, my topic it's a general topic actually, new trends in international education, problems and solutions. I'm going to talk about the concept of international education, international education possibilities and these kind of concepts, international atmosphere, international new trends, problems and solutions, and final remarks. Moving on to the concept of international education and new trends in international education, it's a delicate issue in international education, because as a young person decides to live in or obtain a degree, educational degree, in a completely different society and setting, therefore this might create a kind of concerns for the people, for the young people at the beginning of their professional lives, to decide to live in a different environment. Secondly, I mean, international education and students' issues are an issue for the last 2 or 3 centuries in the country, because during the last period of Ottoman Empire, we all know that so many young people, they went to some certain European countries to have education, as well as having some kind of cultural and social interactions. Therefore, this created a series of issues, series of developments in the country at the final century of Ottoman Empire. Therefore, Turkey has been an active believer of international education, both sending students abroad or receiving students from different parts of the world. So, I mean, education is subject to a very rapidly changing agendas and means and mechanisms in international dimension, international student movements and exchanges are valued due to the need for interaction among nations and societies by establishing closely knitted, everlasting ties between countries and societies. There are further attempts to explore international education possibilities, even going beyond or going further away from the current position. I mean, this is a real prospect for Turkey and for so many other countries. Moving on to the international atmosphere to facilitate educational possibilities, one can say with a degree of confidence that international relations and international education are closely interlinked concepts. Developments in international relations are mirrored in developments in international education. As we all aware, there are breathtaking developments in the field of international relations. There are so many integration attempts, so many integration possibilities, as well as some disintegration aspects in different parts of international organizations and in different parts of the world. So nations are the subject of these developments. Therefore, nations, they have to establish their own ways and means to cope with the developments occurring in international agendas of so many countries. So recently, we have all seen that there are some serious crises in nation states as well as in the international atmosphere. So COVID-19 pandemic, financial burdens the countries have to cope with, and micronationalism and global political issues, and xenophobia, Islamophobia, and this kind of negative attitude in many nations and countries. So the need for international support in alleviating these kind of issues is obvious. Therefore, nations tend to cooperate and collaborate with other nations in order to face or in order to provide some kind of countermeasures to deal with these issues. There are, as we all know, there are two sides of the problem. One is in the international education as a student seeking for education and training in a completely different environment. And as myself, I took, I took some international training and education opportunities in a completely different environment. Therefore, this creates a kind of concern for the students to decide in moving to different parts of the world. Secondly, as a higher education institution, providing education and training for respective students, this is the second part of the issue. So certain threats and potential outside factors, independent variables, which are not within the subject of this presentation. I am not going to talk about xenophobia or Islamophobia because these things are out of our control. Therefore, there's no need for the time being to allocate some time for these problems. So major issues are related to the extremely competitive and rivalry international atmosphere. So many countries are trying to attract international students, but Turkey is fortunate to provide higher education for international students with a reasonable degree of confidence and infrastructure. For the last 30 years, Turkey has been able to develop some kind of policies and infrastructure possibilities. Though these conditions and the possibilities are not enough compared to the potential of the country, but yet you can say that I mean, there is still some kind of starting points for the country. So when you look at the students, prospective students seeking for higher education in a different country and environment, there are certain requirements and priorities of these international students. Firstly, they want to have security and tranquility. As my previous experience, I mean, indicates having students from different parts of European countries at Selçuklu University, or being as students and international students living in a different environment. I should say that security and tranquility of the nation, of the respective home university, is a kind of important point, because as I already mentioned, living and obtaining education in a foreign country is not a simple and easy decision, even today's conditions. So this is important. Secondly, some kind of cultural barriers, some kind of cultural problematic issues, especially related to the reception of the host nation. So the type of or the mechanisms to have students is always controversial in terms of cultural dimension. Secondly, some kind of general conditions, crime rate, security, trust, humanititudes of the home country, host country is important. Besides, some kind of complaint and redress mechanisms in the society. So if the students, they decide to live in a host country, he or she has to make sure that there are some kind of fair procedures and some kind of fair mechanisms should the conditions get worse, or should they think that there are some kind of prejudice or these kind of problems in the society. Secondly, social and cultural opportunities and facilities in the society and in the universities, physical infrastructure, accessibility, accommodation, etc. So, because it's always there is always some degree of tourism in deciding to have education in a different country. Thirdly, cultural aspect, as I said, familiarity with other cultures and tolerance and understanding. So this is an issue of whether you have an open society, open to all kinds of cultures and pluralistic approaches in the society. I should say that quality of education is also important. If you get a degree from a country, you need to make sure that the degrees and the diploma certificates are internationally recognized, and teaching staff quality is important, physical conditions of universities, language, and I should stress again on some kind of fairness in academic environment in a different setting, and some kind of support mechanisms, financial support, private issues, whether the university provides, for example, legal aid for their respective students, or language support, because so many students, they usually get from a different language background. So language support is also important throughout the education. Economical development and conditions of the country, general economic conditions, stability, living conditions, scholarship opportunities, as well as political conditions of the country, relations with the home countries is quite important, political stability, human rights records of the nation, and future expectations. Whether the country, whether you get education and diplomas, would still be attractive in the future. I mean, the position of the country is important because you are going to a kind of flag carrier. You are going to carry your diplomas and certificates throughout your professional life. So, some final remarks. I mean, Turkey has got so many opportunities in international education. I mean, recently we have started to establish a foundation university in Çanakkale, which is going to be an international university. We have some, I mean, Turkish and international partners to invest in education, international university education. Therefore, recently I have been able to spend some of my time to design university and the programs and the ways and mechanisms to be followed throughout education processes. Therefore, geography of the country, geography of the city, respective city, which accommodates the university is important. Nobody wants to go, a place which is remote from all kind of national facilities and attraction possibilities. Second, culture, values, young and dynamic population and future expectations, which are available in Turkey, and attitude of rival nations and countries, available vacant positions in higher education institutions, and therefore the need for a comprehensive approach to this issue has just been recognized by Turkish Higher Education Council and by Turkish authorities, I should say. Attracting students can only be possible by employing internationally reputable teaching staff, especially from the respective countries. If I want to go to study in a place where, if there is a possibility to at least to have or to have a contact person, teaching staff in the university, I always prefer to go there. So students want to see academic personnel speaking usually the same language they speak. Unfortunately, in the past, we have tried to we had tried to attract some teaching staff to Necmettin Erbakan University, but I should say that we faced some kind of resistance from certain departments. So even some of them, they say that, we, for example, employed Arabic teachers in our Faculty of Theology. So many teaching staff, they came and they said that these people, they don't know Arabic. But these people are native. They are from Jordanian, from Egypt, and from different parts of, Arabic folk. And their native language, as well as they also had education, language and linguistic education from those nations. But they, some Turkish staff, they said, these people, they don't know Arabic. So these kind of things, the resistance from the teaching staff, Turkish teaching staff, is a kind of barrier, I should say. Secondly, certain European or American universities, they want to establish, they already established some universities in Far East, in Middle Eastern countries. So they do not want to have students in their countries, rather they prefer to establish universities in their, in near or in the country where the prospective students are located. So this is a kind of opportunity for Turkey, because as Turkish Airlines, they adapted, they deployed the method of proactively promoting their flights throughout the world, especially after 9/11. So the development of Turkish Airlines can be doubled in the development of having more international students. Therefore, teaching processes. I mean, you need to adopt some kind of teaching methods to establish or to get to motivate international students in a bilateral level. So if you try to follow traditional teaching methods, this doesn't work, especially with international students, because students they are coming from different cultural and academical backgrounds. So you need to take some kind of steps to materialize their knowledge, to get a kind of lessons and possibilities. So I have an alternative. I mean, to establish an international university model in Turkey, because in Turkey, all the universities are subject to the same legal requirements. So you have to differentiate legal backgrounds. You have to differentiate some kind of, some kind of flexibility to attract students as well as train or teach the background. So in my view, I mean, as a person who have worked, I mean, recently on this issue, in practical dimensions, Turkey can accommodate at least 1 million students in a 5-year time period. So Turkey should, because I mean, so many departments and faculties in state universities and foundation universities are vacant now. So there are some places to accommodate these students. But first, you need to establish your own higher education area with your competencies, recognition, language possibilities, language requirements, and techniques, and etc. Because as a part of, I mean, Turkey has been a part of European higher education area for the last nearly 20 years. But I should say that as myself, I served as a Bologna promoter, a member of National Bologna team in 2008 and in 2009 periods. I should say that Turkey has to establish its own higher education area in order to succeed, in order to have real prospects for higher education. I mean, if you want to have a kind of success in this issue. So the concepts and framework are imported and not suitable for the conditions of the country at the moment. So we need to have a kind of higher education reform. We need to have a kind of our own higher education area with the competencies, requirements, etc. So, I mean, the starting point is this. I mean, we establish universities all the same, I mean, with the same requirements, with the same structure, with the same priorities. So, I mean, there's no need for more of the same. So we have to differentiate in Turkey. We have to establish own original policies and concepts. I think my time is due now. Thank you very much for listening. And I am looking forward to seeing the final report of the workshop. If the final report contains some practical issues rather than theoretical issues is something else. So I will be glad to see and to have my reflections on the final report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Professor. Professor Kutlu focused on the importance of the outsider dynamics and the social dynamics which affect the mobilization of the international students. And thank you very much for this beautiful presentation, Mr. Professor. I would like to continue with our second speaker, Professor Dr. Branislav Radelic from Necmettin Erbakan University. Dear Professor, you have 15 minutes. Please enjoy your time.
Thank you very much for organizing this session, and I think the topic is extremely important both for us as academics, but also for our current and prospective students. And when I say our, I don't only refer to the university I belong to, but in general, the higher education sector. Professor Kutlu has outlined a number of extremely important aspects, and I hope we will have some time later during our Q&A session to unpack some of those ideas in more depth, because they are of crucial relevance when it comes to the future of the higher education sector, both nationally and internationally. I would start by saying that the globalization of the higher education sector, especially after the Cold War, has come to represent a remarkable opportunity for greater interaction and collaboration between universities worldwide. Simultaneously, the increasingly competitive environment has imposed the need for a continuous improvement of competencies. And this is something that Professor Kutlu has pointed out, in order to successfully confront challenges and find durable solutions for the years and generations ahead. So in this context, the mobility of students and academics, as well as their participation in joint projects and international partnerships, is recognized as core for the development of globally oriented individuals as contributors to the public good. Accordingly, in order to consolidate their presence and accomplishments in terms of global engagement, different universities have invested efforts in developing internationalization strategies. We should not forget that last December, the Council of Higher Education, or the YOC, circulated a fairly long document. I remember it was on the 29th December, which listed a range of goals in relation to the Turkish higher education sector. Given that the document was released during the pandemic, it also takes into consideration the impact of the pandemic and possible solutions to some of the challenges. So the new YOC vision talks about goal-oriented internationalization in the document. And later on, I will also outline some other aspects from the vision. So what are some of the key, this is a question for all of us, what are some of the key elements that universities should be aware of when drafting and implementing their internationalization strategies? And when we were developing our strategy, that was last year, and it was inaugurated in January this year, when we were developing our internationalization strategy, which is to cover the period between 2021 and 2025, we divided it into three parts. The first part deals with infrastructure. The second part is dedicated to our current and future students. And the third part is about our academics and excellence in research and development, which altogether can be labeled as academic integrity. So when it comes to the question of infrastructure, we usually refer to infrastructure that characterizes our campuses. This is not only about divisions dealing with internationalization, such as an Office of International Affairs or an international house which can provide space for different activities, including temporary accommodation for foreign visitors, but this is also about other facilities. So, for example, if I take a look at our university, we see that our university hospital, with the capacity of more than 1,000 beds, is capable of treating more than 1 million patients and performing more than 60,000 surgeries a year. This is a huge asset. And in addition, we are also very proud of our university press and library services, whose resources are really recognized both nationally and internationally. So our world-class campuses and research facilities make the university an attractive place for foreign students and scholars, and therefore a sound partner for international collaborative undertakings. And since I joined the university in October last year, we have managed to sign a number of memoranda of understanding with different international universities. And I have noticed that this has been extremely important when approaching international partners, because what often happens is that our international partners are not really fully aware of the infrastructure we have to offer and how up to date our infrastructure is. So most recently, we signed agreements with universities from China and Pakistan, and they were truly impressed to see what our campuses have to offer. However, when talking about infrastructure on campus, we must also think about how our infrastructure is likely to connect us to the external environment, and thus what kind of interaction we can establish with the outside world thanks to our infrastructure. So having some good examples of this kind of interaction is likely to boost any university's attractiveness when it comes to internationalization, especially among those students and researchers whose skills and acquired knowledge imply some real synergies between academia and the industry. So again, and in accordance to the New York vision of December 2020, as they put it, and this is a quote, "For the first time, the Turkish higher education system has gained a business model." I think for us as academics, but also for students, current and prospective, this is a key thing how the Higher Education Council perceives the future of education in the country, which then goes back also to some of the points that Professor Kutlu outlined before in terms of how we should be responding also to some of these statements or articles coming from York. So there is a big emphasis placed on research and development on strategic issues and effective and efficient use of public resources. Of course, we have to acknowledge that some disciplines will be more successful than others in attracting resources. So we also, if I take a look at our university, we can say that our collaboration with the InnoPark Konya Technology Development Zone has provided the university with an opportunity to propose and successfully implement numerous projects focusing on both services and manufacturing, with a particular emphasis on new designs and technologies. So as we heard before, some places are going to be more attractive. And for me, being a foreigner in Turkey, probably I would say, oh yes, Ankara and Istanbul are the most attractive places where international academics, international students would like to go to. But also then this is an incentive for places like Konya, who have already been doing a lot for universities in Konya, to really try to develop strategies and to link as much as possible with the industry in order to provide space, not only for domestic students, but also for international students interested in potentially staying in the area later on. So this would be my point about infrastructure. Now, when it comes to the second point, and that is about our current and future students, universities are expected to provide an inclusive and interacting working environment in which creativity leads to innovation and an even greater collaboration between universities, the government, and the private sector. This sounds like a marketing statement, and it is often used by universities in order to promote themselves in front of especially prospective students. So, but aware of the challenges posed by globalization, universities aim to produce graduates and junior researchers capable of playing key roles in the increasingly independent world. So the question for each institution really is, to what extent are we managing to do something that we are actually promoting in our brochures, something that we are promoting in our strategies, and what are some of the solutions to those challenges? So our students in the end are our ambassadors, and we should never forget that. So as our commitment to internationalization, many of our undergraduate and postgraduate students tend to participate in different mobility programs, and by doing so to acquire competencies that are often of great use for life and work in diverse contexts. So in addition to the funding schemes provided by the European Union that Turkish students can benefit from, or international students based in Turkey can benefit from, or the funding schemes provided by the Turkish government, our individual universities have to also seek other venues to explore other options as to how they can increase their international profile, and by doing so encourage students, both who are already studying at those places, but also to attract students to come and become part of those universities. The question of language was mentioned before, so I will not spend more time on that because I also had that as part of my presentation for today. But I would just like to say, in my role of Director of Internationalization at Necmet Erbakan University, I have had meetings with all of our deans and directors of institutes. And the question of language competency has often come across as probably the key obstacle for so many students to decide to spend time abroad, to decide to really engage with any of the aspects of the internationalization strategy. And I'm sure my colleague Şeyma, who will be talking later, she can tell us maybe a bit more as to what kind of strategies we are putting in place in order to really bridge this gap and be as inclusive as possible when it comes to students whose language competencies are not as good as those of some other students, but would still like to take part in different initiatives. So in the years to come, and I would like to see whether Professor Kutlu agrees with me, but I would argue that individual faculties will be expected to develop sound policies targeting recruitment of international students at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels, but also strategies as to how to send our own students abroad. And they have to be surely innovative strategies. We do need a certain reform of the system. Different faculties will have different needs, and I have understood this when talking to our deans, and therefore some study disciplines are likely to be more open to internationalization than some other areas. And we can see this when we take a look at the study of law, for example, and judicial system of Turkey. Of course, it could be difficult for students wishing to go and spend a semester or a whole year in China, to what extent they can really then use that knowledge when they come back home. Another point that I would like to stress from the new YOC vision of December 2020 is, because they have paid attention to the implications of the pandemic, they have mentioned the model of hybrid education. And hybrid education is definitely something important. It is being implemented by many universities around the world, which very much corresponds to the need for virtual environment and distance education. We have to be alarmed here, because this requires a lot of work and also a very speedy reaction if we want to remain competitive. And this is a big risk that also kind of globalization has somehow provoked, that we really have to be on top of our stuff, on top of our agendas all the time if we want to remain sufficiently competitive, meaning sufficiently attractive when it comes to internationalization, both when it comes to incoming students from abroad and also capacity to send our students abroad. The question of funding and scholarship provision is also key, and I was glad to see that in the YOC vision. It was really outlined as crucial for the question of access of students, and we can agree that there are many students who are simply not, unfortunately, in a position to afford spending time abroad, but they are at the same time aware of the importance of having spent time abroad when applying for jobs, because employers sometimes will just give preference to students who have spent time abroad, right? So we have to see what kind of models we are going to put in place so that every student can benefit from those opportunities. And the third part of our internationalization strategy, although this is not necessarily the topic of our session today, but I just would like to conclude by saying a couple of words about that, is really about our academics and excellence in research and development. And universities are keen on attracting scholars with international training, as pointed out by my colleague earlier, and to bring in scholars who produce impactful research that has been recognized both nationally and internationally. Now, we also have to acknowledge that Turkey has experienced some difficulties in this respect, as many foreign scholars have had certain reservations when it comes to the political and economic situation in the country. So this is something that should be taken into consideration, I would say, by YOC going forward, to really see how this particular issue or issues can be addressed so that really Turkey will become very attractive when it comes to also international scholars who would like to come not only for a conference or a workshop, but actually would like to come and spend a whole semester or a whole academic year. World rank research and participation in external projects is really key for visibility, and having foreign scholars be present on our campuses is absolutely necessary. Moreover, international scholars, either as temporary or permanent members of staff, are key to the overall experience of students, and this was also mentioned before. So their invaluable contribution to education in a foreign language and cultural diversity of our university have gradually transformed, or can gradually transform, our campuses to become even more welcoming and cosmopolitan for the future. And again, thinking of the YOC vision, we see that points 19 and 20, if I remember well, talk really about the importance of research and foreign research, really, and participation in international projects for the sake of knowledge transfer, for the sake of economic progress, and so on. And another point talks about regulations in the employment of foreign academics, which is also key as to how to attract really foreign academics to decide that actually they want to give priority to Turkey and not some other place. The global pandemic, and this has been touched upon earlier, so I will not spend time on that, and we can come back to this matter later during the Q&A session, has of course opened so many questions in terms of student mobility, in terms of also faculty mobility, in terms of overall internationalization plans. But I would argue that good universities with good infrastructure are already very seriously considering how they are going to respond to these matters. And I will be happy to share some of my ideas later on, but I don't want to take too much time at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Professor. It was a very interesting presentation. Professor Radevich basically focused on the new profile of the international students' mobilization, especially after the Cold War within the New World Order, and especially on the case of Turkey, higher education councils, educational reforms, and other technical issues. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Professor. We will continue with our third speaker of today, lecturer Teslime Gökgöl from Konya Technical University. You have 15 minutes, dear professor. Please enjoy your time.
Maybe shorter. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm from Konya Technical University, and I'm working at International Relations Office. And 3 months ago, I was given the duty to help the international students, and I'm so happy. First of all, I'd like to declare that yesterday there was so many questions and the students were wondering, and today the subject again mentioned. So this year, the Presidency of Turks Abroad and related communities started a project that they want all the international students have traineeship. So we just newly signed a protocol between our university and the Presidency of Turks Abroad and related communities to declare our students that they can have traineeship wherever they want. So we will inform all the students soon. And today we are in this session. We are expected to talk about the whether political issues affect internationalization, international movements of students, and is there any change in the student movement from east to west or from north to south? So I want to talk about this. In International Relations Office, before signing a protocol, we decide on the countries that we want to sign protocols, memorandum of understanding. Then we check the ranking systems, like most of us know, Times Higher Education, which includes all the top universities in the world. And we can see what kind of education universities provide, how many students they take each year. So 10 years ago, while I was checking for rankings, I didn't realize something, because generally international students prefer English-speaking countries. And these are generally, you know, Canada, United States of America, or England. But now I see 3 different countries in the top 25 universities: Switzerland, China, especially China, and Singapore, which means that which can be concluded that the balance is changing. International students are looking for opportunities, international education systems in different countries too. And this also affects their ranking system place, you know. So it's an indicator that the international students started to prefer other countries too. Especially there is a tendency to China after English-speaking countries, and Peking University is one of the top-rated universities at this moment. So I want to also talk about one of my experiences that one of my students were, while I was working with high school students, whenever I asked my students, they were telling I want to be a student of Oxford. I want to be a student of Harvard. But now whenever I ask to high school students, they say, I want to study at Korea. I want to study at China. I want to study at different countries. And it is amazing, you know. And now, as we see the reports by Council of Higher Education, the number of international students in our country is increasing too. As there are so many reasons of this. And in recent years, Council of Higher Education has started a system, a website, Study in Turkey, which gives information about all the universities that foreign students can check the universities, their language, their environment, the city they are in. In 2015, I had an experience about the political conflicts and how can it affect. You know, in November 24, as far as I remember, a Russian warplane was shot by Turkish side on the borders of Syria and Turkey. So it suddenly created a trouble. At that day, I had 2 Russian students, and suddenly we had a letter from their university asking for their students to be sent back to their countries. Suddenly, they terminated all the protocols, all the programs we signed, and our students were in Russia too. And we contacted them too, and some of them said, no problem, they are safe, we will be taking care of them. But it created a atmosphere that feels everyone disturbed. So political issues has an effect on all the parts of society, not only on students, not only on movements, also on families living the other countries, on everyone. So this is the most affected example of mine. This is the most disturbing, shocking experience of myself. So we can conclude that, as I said previously, any political issue can affect any kind, any part of society. It may be international students, it may be families. Families. Sorry, I'm so excited. For this program, we have been talking about the problems, the issues our international students encounter. Of course, when we send our students to abroad, we know that they come across different problems and they find solutions in a way. But when the number is a lot and when most of the students encounter the same problem, we need to do something. We need to find a way to solve the problem, or at least try it. And I really enjoyed these sessions that I have an idea in mind, coming together all the related authorities like municipality, universities, immigration office. We can find solutions, because whenever we listen our international students, we see that the problems are common, and these are not cannot be solved. They can easily be solved. For example, creating a website together with all the authorities and wanting the help of our international students, we can create a content that all of the international students can enjoy, also benefit before coming and while living in here. I'm going to give details of this to organizing community. And this all I want to say. Hope this experience helped you in a way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Professor Gökgöl basically focused on the new trends in the preferences of the international students and flow from west to east. And this was a very interesting information for me, which is I didn't know. and also how sometimes international politics might be dominant even on the education. And I will be the fourth speaker of this session, but I will have a short conversation, and it will not be a technical presentation, but I would like to share my personal experiences when I was an international student, and I will try to give an answer of a question: what happens when a Turk becomes an international student in abroad and returns back to Turkey? 2 times in my life, in fact, I had a chance to be an international student. The first one was in 2005. I was an Erasmus student in Poland, Szczecin. And second time, I had a chance to finish my PhD in University of Bucharest, Romania. I was a scholarship holder of the Romanian Minister of Foreign Affairs. And in advance, I have to tell you that both of the experiences were extremely great for me, but sometimes I experienced some problems, and also I experienced some problems when I did return to Turkey. And shortly, I would like to speak about these issues. The first thing when I went to Romania was I didn't know the Romanian language at the time, and when I went to the university, I was expecting to immediately start my doctoral studies. And from the foreign students office, they informed me that I'm a scholarship holder, and it's a mandatory thing to join language courses a year to learn the Romanian language. And at first I was very much disappointed, because I considered that it's a waste of time. And now when I return back to these years, now I say, fortunately, I attended these courses. But the important thing is, I think the language courses should be carried out in the native country or hosting country. I'm sorry. If I would take the Romanian courses in Turkey, maybe this wouldn't be that useful. But when I took the courses in Bucharest, this was something very useful. And in 3 or 4 or 5 months, I had a chance to learn the English. I think this is a very important subject. And the second thing, my observation was related also to linguistic problems. When I went to the university, my English was okay, but shortly after, I understood that professors are expecting much more beside the English. And when I started to write my papers, my advisor was talking to me, and he was saying, "Yiğit, why you are always using English sources?" And when I was adding Turkish sources, it was a little bit interesting to him. Romanian sources, it was not interesting for them due to the language is their native language. And he was asking from me to add French sources, to use French sources, Italian sources, and Spanish even. And one day, I think my self-confidence was super high, and I asked to my advisor, "Sir, you are always suggesting me to use sources written in different languages," but I asked to him, "Do you know these languages?" And he said to me, "I wrote these books." So it was a problem for me, and unfortunately, I couldn't solve this problem till I finished my thesis. I only used the English and Romanian and Turkish resources during my thesis. And I think this is a quite important subject in Turkey. We have to consider the teaching the second and third languages, not only in the universities, but maybe from the primary school or middle school or high school. This is a problem. And the third problem that I experience when you become an international student abroad, I think this is a reflex. But people, the native population, was trying to pursue the international students in the sense of Wallerstein's core periphery approach. And they were telling me that you came here because You believe that our country is better than your country. And they were also saying that the education in here is better than in your country, so you came here. And I had an extreme difficulties to express myself. And I was saying, no, it's not all about being good education, bad education, but I just wanted to experience new things, add new things to my bag. And I think this was, I truly believe that I couldn't express myself properly. And learning some new things in abroad is a great experience. And I wanted to experience that situation. This was my motivation. This was the purpose of my visit. And the fourth problem was, personally, I didn't experience any kind of discrimination. But a couple of weeks ago, one of my former students called me, and he's an international student in a Western European country, and he told me that I experienced a discrimination from the academic staff, and even I was sharing the same conditions with the others. They passed the courses, and I was failed, and he changed country. This is the one side of this problem, but the second problem, I experienced that problem. Sometimes international students were using that discrimination notion as an excuse. They were not carrying out their responsibilities, they were not working, they were not writing good in the exams, and when they fail, they were complaining to the state authorities that I experienced a discrimination. This is also, I think, it's a quite important subject, because discrimination has two different dimensions at that point. And another thing was returning back to home. This was also a problem, because when I went to Romania, I was 22 years old, and I spent 5 years. And returning back to home, yesterday, Professor Kutlu perfectly explained this, because when I went there, it was a cultural shock. But I did adapt myself. And I noticed that I was half thinking and behaving like them. This is something very normal, I think, for me. This is all about integration and adaptation process. But the problem was, when I back to home, it was a cultural shock again. I'm not joking. It was a cultural shock, and I had a chance. I needed a time to myself to readapt myself to my hometown, where I spent all my life. And so the cultural adaptation has also two different dimensions. I think when you go to the abroad, and when you return back to your country, and also I noticed that it was also my observation, all the international students, including me, we were preferring to study something related to our country during our PhD thesis or master thesis. I mean, I was choosing something related to Turkey. One of my friends from Iraq, he chose something related with the foreign policy of Iraq. And one of my friends from Pakistan, he wrote about the Kashmir issue. Maybe we were choosing, this was also a reflex. When I had a chance to speak with my academic advisor, and I asked him, you are giving me a scholarship, and what's the gain of your country? What's the gain of Romania? And he said, your PhD thesis. So you are writing something about Turkey. This is kind of a win-win policy, I think. I was writing something about Turkey to them, to their library, and they were telling me that this is a very good prepared information regarding Turkey from the eye of a Turk. And for me, I knew what I was writing. So this was also, this was kind of a reflex of the international students. Automatically, they were choosing the topic related to their home country. And the last issue was, when I returned back to Turkey, I had a quite important problem, because I was a scholarship of I was a scholarship holder of the Romanian Minister of Foreign Affairs, so I didn't have any connection with Turkey. And when I back to Turkey, I didn't know how the system works in here, because when I left the country, I was a student. But when I returned back to the country, I was a potential scholar. I was a potential academic. And I didn't know how the system works, because I was forgotten by my teachers, my close friends who were involved in the academy. They were already research fellows. They were already settled in academic positions. And I didn't know what is the way to apply to an academic position. Should I send my CV to the rector? Should I send my CV to the dean or head of the department? What is the way to do that? So I always applied to state institutions. I was not thinking to be an academic. And when I was applying to, for example, Minister of Foreign Affairs or other state institutions, I was reaching till the interview level, and all I was rejected for 5-6 attempts. And they were telling that you have a doctoral PhD degree, your place is not here. You have to work in a university. When you find a job in the university, you will leave us, and we don't want to experience that kind of a situation. And a year, I couldn't find a job. I think in here, governments should, I was not expecting to be, the next day, the very next day when I come back to Turkey to settle to be a position. Of course, I was not expecting that, but at least I was expecting to be presented some options or maybe some ideas, because some other scholarship holders, my friends, they had a mandatory service. They were the scholarship of the Turkish government, and when they returned back to Turkey, they were immediately placed to academic positions. It was their mandatory service. They were complaining about their mandatory service, but at the same time, I was saying to myself that I wish I would have a mandatory service. At least I would have a job. So this is also a quite important subject. And the last thing I would like to share with you is the equivalence of your diploma, because one of my friends, he was thinking that there was that the Turkish Higher Education Council was not recognizing that university. So he thank you very much for listening to me, and I would like to immediately continue with our next speaker, Dr. Şeyma Akın from Necmettin Erbakan University, the professor. 50 minutes, please enjoy your time.
Thanks a lot. Let me just turn on my camera. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity and having me here. I will talk about Erasmus, but before starting my speech, I would like to advise an article written by Alfred Schütz, The Homecomer, because you mentioned when you came back home, you didn't feel like home in a way, and he really described it, how a homecomer could actually be also a foreign person. It's not the same person anymore. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
It would be interesting maybe to read. Okay, so I will more focus on the Erasmus program. The reason for that is, of course, because I'm the Erasmus coordinator of Necmettin Erbakan University, but also because it shows the practical side of internationalization. Okay, so here we can see what is going on, or this is one of the aspects where we can see what's going on in internationalization in terms of student mobility and staff mobility. The second is also Erasmus is a trendsetter, so to say. All the things that Erasmus is doing, embedding in the program, the others are following in some way, and I will mention it later on in my speech too. That's why I will focus, as I said, on the Erasmus program. Let me just briefly say a few things about, or give us a few numbers related to internationalization. Are you having trouble in hearing me? Because I can see some faces trying to concentrate. Is there a problem with the audio?
Right now, your connection seems quite good.
It's okay.
There's
Okay,
no
great.
problem. Yeah.
Okay, so I will give you some numbers. However, please keep in mind that these numbers might change, okay, or they are not the exact numbers. But still, I took them because we can see in a way what is going on around the world with these numbers. And some change, and we don't have the numbers for this year, of course. Some numbers are related to 2020. Some are to 2019 due to the pandemic, etc., etc. But as I said, it will give us a general idea about the internationalization related to the Erasmus program. So before the Erasmus program, maybe just a few things about the international mobility worldwide. We had approximately 5.5 million international students in 2020 worldwide. Okay, so this is a huge number. That means more than 5 million people are mobile, going to places around the world. And as one of you just said, not just to Europe or just to the US, but also to all the other parts of the world, China or Korea being now more attractive, one of the more attractive countries in the world. In Turkey, the number of international students is approximately 150,000. And yesterday it was mentioned 25,000 of them receive a scholarship from Turkey, from several institutions in Turkey. The others, they finance themselves or they find other means of fundings. The first top around the world is the USA, following the UK and Australia. And I think we can understand that it's not a coincidence that all these three countries are in a way Anglo-Saxon countries speaking English, because part of the mobility of students is to learn a language, English, to improve their language. So they choose these countries. These are the main destinations, that they have been the main destinations, and they most probably will be for over the next years. And when we have a look at Turkey again, we can see that about 100,000 students annually go abroad, okay, to study or to get any kind of education. This could be again language education for a shorter period. It includes the Erasmus or any other form of education, bachelor or graduate studies. And these 100,000 students spend about $2 billion. That's also a huge amount, especially from when you consider it from the Turkish perspective. And approximately half of these students go through the Erasmus program. Okay, and this is very important. This shows that the Erasmus program is very important. It's very essential in the international strategy of the countries. Otherwise, it would be most probably 50,000. So 50,000 more are traveling through Erasmus, most probably because it enables them to travel easier, which means they get their visas free and with less problems. They get some amount of funding, although the funding is not very high, not sufficient to cover all their needs, but the basic needs are covered with the scholarships or the grants through the Erasmus program. And the programs that are mostly chosen both for Erasmus and international students going abroad is engineering, social sciences, but now the trend is also changing. People are going to learn about fashion or arts in a way. This is also something new in Turkey. And of course, language. So learning a language or developing your language skills is still one of the main reasons for traveling abroad in Turkey. And where do people or students go? Which countries do they usually prefer when we have a look at that? It's the USA again, coming first, and followed by Germany. The next is Bulgaria, and then Azerbaijan, then the UK and Austria. And it goes on very mixed. And this is quite interesting, I would say. Okay, so we have the USA, most probably because of it still has the prestige. People can get scholarships. You can learn languages there. The UK is also chosen for that reason, I would say, and also for the opportunities to do your master's degree or your PhD there. But then in the second place is Germany, and this is not a coincidence again, because I would say, as it is the case with migration, so people prefer places where they can find accommodation easily, or where they have some relatives, friends, whatsoever. I would say that Germany and Austria are also chosen for that reason. The third country is Bulgaria. So this seems also very interesting. I don't know the reasons behind it, but I'm just guessing the reasons. Most probably it's Bulgaria because it's cheaper, first of all, and then it offers some opportunities for language courses. The fourth country is Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is usually preferred by Turkish students because if they're not able to be enrolled in a good university here in Turkey, then they choose Azerbaijan because enrollment there is easier. The costs are not very high in Azerbaijan, so studying there is much easier, and of course the language barrier is not there. Although Turkish spoken in Turkey and Azerbaijan are not exactly the same. In a month, all the obstacles are overcome in some way or another. So the reasons for choosing the countries in Turkey really differs depending on what type of program or what type of education you're seeking. And the mobility programs in Turkey are, aside from the general international movements, the Farabi, the Mevlana, and the Erasmus programs, which are all funded by some institution, the government or the European Commission. Farabi is as you know, the program which provides exchange between universities in Turkey. Mevlana is all around the world, and the Erasmus. However, the Mevlana program is not very active. Not many people prefer to choose it. The main reason for it is, of course, financial. Many students in Turkey are not able to have the funding to go to all these countries, and the money they give through Mevlana is not very high. So Erasmus still is the most attractive mobility program in that sense. The Erasmus program started in the 80s in Europe as a pilot project. However, in Turkey, the start of it in Turkey is 2003. Okay, with 2003, not all universities had it all at once, but step by step. Now, every university, independent if it's public or private, they have an Erasmus program running. The mobility grants of the Erasmus program, I'm sharing with you the numbers to give a general idea of the program. In 2019, it was 83 million euros, and the higher education institutions received 50 million euros. From a total number of about 1,300 projects, higher education institutions realized 266 projects from the Erasmus program. In 2000, and just to compare, remember in 2019 the money was 83 million, from which 50 million went to higher education institutions. In 2014, it was 68 million in total, and for higher education institutions it was 38 million. So there's quite an increase when we compare these years, which shows us that throughout these years, internationalization got more and more attractive, and the numbers are increasing, of course. Some more to give some statistics about the Erasmus program. Okay, so I will focus again here on higher education institutions. As you know, there are many other programs within the Erasmus program. but my focus is on the universities, higher education institutions. The top sending universities in Turkey at the moment are Marmara, Anadolu universities, and also Yıldız Technical University. And the top receiving countries through Erasmus are Poland, it comes first, Germany and Spain. Okay, this is related to the Turkish student mobility, of course, not the European. Why we have Poland? I would say because it's much easier for universities, that's also my experience, to get an agreement with Polish universities. And the standards of living are not very high, which is also attractive for a Turkish student to choose Poland. The second is Germany, because we have many agreements with Germany, but most probably they have some relatives there, some friends, okay, where they can find easily accommodation or any type of support. And Spain is third, but however, I would say that this might change. Okay, Italy sometimes it's Spain or other countries. In 2014 and 15, the outgoing number of students was 12,000. And the incoming is 6,000. Why I'm mentioning these numbers is, okay, I will tell you later. In 2018 and 19, that means 4 years later, the outgoing number was 13,000. So there was an increase from 12,000 to 13,000. However, the number of incoming students dropped to 2,700. So it was 6,000 in 2014. However, in 2019, it became 2,700. Normally, you would expect that it would increase, okay, because the outgoing number increased. We have more universities now with the Erasmus, within the Erasmus program, but still there is a drop. And when we have a closer look, we can see that the drop especially happened in the years 2015 and 16. No coincidence, because there were bombings in Turkey, there were political problems, there was the coup attempt, in 2016. These things all affect the mobility, as some of my colleagues just mentioned it. Okay, so political stability within the country is very important, and this can be understood even from these figures. Okay, so again, 2014, 6,000 incoming. All of a sudden it's 2,000, and then it's not easy to change the ideas of the people. Normally you would expect that this will change after a few years, but it didn't. Okay, we still don't have the numbers as we had them in 2014. With the staff, it's not the same. Okay, so the staff also dropped during 2015 and 16. However, their number increased easily, maybe because they are traveling for a shorter time. Okay, security issues are not a big problem for them, but for students it is, and there's still a lot to do to come back to the figures we had in 2014. When we have a look at the incoming side of the Erasmus, not the outgoing, but the incoming, who is coming and where are they coming to, we can see that there are some popular destinations in Turkey. So we have the top higher education institutions, that's METÜ, the Middle Eastern Technical University, followed by Bilkent, then Boğaziçi, and then Bilgi and Sabancı. Okay, some of them are state universities, some of them are private universities, but it's not just because they're private or public universities. It's one of the reasons is definitely the location. Okay, they are in Istanbul and they are in Ankara. Lots of students prefer cities which provide lots of opportunities for them, facilities for them. And it's also because these institutions are the popularity of these institutions are much higher than let's say Necmettin Erbakan University or any other university within our region. The facilities these universities provide is also much better. The university staff and students are much more open to the world. They are more receiving. Here at our universities, it happens that some professors resist, or they don't encourage, but discourage students from traveling abroad or having an experience abroad. And also, and I would say this is one of the main reasons, the language. Okay, so here when we have a look at METÜ or Bilkent or Boğaziçi, they all have programs in English, which makes exchange much easier. That's why we at Necmettin Erbakan University are trying to increase the number of departments providing classes in English, and we are trying to create a pool of courses also in English to attract more students, because this is the main barrier, so to say. If they come and they can't participate in any class, then it makes often no sense. That's why where we have to work on and what we actually do at the moment. The top areas are engineering, as mentioned before, and the social sciences. Actually, when we look at international students coming through Erasmus or going through Erasmus or the other international programs, there's a difference. Students coming to Turkey to study through the scholarships like YTB often prefer branches related to healthcare or medicine, because the job opportunities in that area is much higher. However, when we come to the exchange form in form of Erasmus, and medicine doesn't seem to be very attractive, most probably because it's not easy to do the exchange. Classes are different, and it's a hard field to study, so to say. That's why we have engineering and social sciences in the exchange program. No, did I miss anything? I took some notes, that's why I'm looking at some of them. Okay. And maybe a few notes about the new Erasmus period. As you know, the Erasmus project is for 7 years. Okay, so it started, for example, in 2014, ended in 2020. Now we are in a new period. Started this year, 2021, and it will end in 2027. Here there are some changes to the Erasmus project. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because it again shows us where the trend towards is. So where is the world going? Where is internationalization going? What forms or what aspects of it will change or are likely to change in the future and will affect also international mobilization in general? The budget, for example, is much higher in the new period. Again, in 2021 and 27, the new budget is 26 billion euros, okay, for the whole period. However, the previous, that means for 2014 to 20, it was 15 billion. So there's a huge increase in the budget. And also the allocation is a bit different. So 88% goes to education and training. And when we say education and training, please don't just understand higher education. It includes all types of education, higher education, vocational schools, sports, etc. 10% goes to youth, 2% to sports, and 1% to John Monnet, but that's not the point here. And also there are some priorities within the new program, some strategic priorities. It is aimed to be more inclusive, which means some students, because of financial problems or because they have some handicaps, they should be also included in the new program. So they are offering a new type of funding for such students. Another priority is digital. So we can see the European Union, I mean, this program started actually before the pandemic, and it was already there. The digitalization of education was already in the program. Which will be embedded, which will be implemented in the future. So part of the exchange of the Erasmus program will be blended, will be hybrid, so to say. Okay, partly digital, online courses, and partly through mobilization. That's also something new in the program. And also sustainability is highlighted. So going green is a big motto in the new Erasmus period. They encourage you not to travel by train, but by not travel by plane, but by train, because although it's more expensive, we are allowed to provide some extra funding through that. And another novelty in the program is that they offer also short-term programs. This will also, I think, increase mobility of students. What I mean by short-term here is when you know of the Erasmus program, there are two main mobility sides for students, aspects for students. One of them is for education, so which takes usually 5 to 6 months. And then for internship, which is 2 to 3 months approximately. That was also the case for MA students and PhD students. Now, however, they are changing it. These students could go to the program for 5 days or from 5 days to 30 days. Okay, so if they're going to do some research, okay, this will allow them to go and have a quick look, maybe to the library or to work with some professor. So the short-term exchange is also something new, and also the budget of the European the Erasmus program has also changed. What I'm trying to say here is normally we receive a budget, and with this budget only European countries are allowed for students. Okay, so they were not able to travel to Malaysia, for example, or to Korea. But now with the new budget, they will allow students to realize their mobilization outside the European Union area. That is with the program countries. This is also something new, and which will, I guess, increase the number of students and their mobility. Okay, so maybe a few words to Konya. Okay, so what is the problem? What kind of problems are we facing here with these mobility issues? Or let me just talk about why Erasmus is important in the first place. Okay, why do we encourage students to go abroad with the Erasmus program, and why do we try to increase the numbers going there? First of all, I mean, it's in Turkey. It's not only in Turkey, especially for Konya. It's the first experience for staff and for students, especially for students. So most of our students have never been abroad. This will be the first time for them. So the first time means also the first encounter with lots of aspects, the first encounter with a new form of education. Okay, so usually they are perplexed, they are puzzled when they first arrive there and don't know what to do. And so this is something new that they first encounter. They also encounter for the first time new types of people, so to say. Okay, so communication with them, the standard of living, the way of living, this is also completely new for them, and the environment, of course. And of course, the most important is the culture. So they are able to encounter a new culture and then learn how to be able to cope with that kind of culture, which is a huge enrichment, I think, for the students. And the second issue, why we encourage them for mobility, is that they gain some sort of independence. Okay, although they're alone, which is very stressful for the students, they also are more independent and more self-confident. That's what students actually tell us when they go and come back. They say, I'm so happy that I did this. Okay, I had lots of problems, but when I came back, I'm not the same person anymore. I have learned so many things. And this is important when you consider the profile of the Turkish students, especially the Turkish students in Konya. Usually we are protected by the families, by our mothers and fathers. We don't do things by ourselves. This gives them a chance actually to do something by themselves, and which is quite big. For the staff, it also has lots of benefits like networking, seeing good practices, having an experience abroad, or even strengthen relationships. We might have already a network, but strengthen that kind of network is also quite important. The position, do I have time? I mean, I'm talking and talking. I exceeded it. Okay, so my connection is.
Could you it's okay right now. We extended time, in fact, but I can add a couple of minutes more in order to evaluate the subject.
Okay, so I'm almost through it. Okay, so I will finish it very quickly then. To say a few things about Konya now, about the position of Konya, it's very hard to compete with other cities in Konya, especially with Istanbul and Ankara, and also Antalya. I mean, there are also students coming to Antalya or Mersin because of the Riviera, okay, because of the sea, because of the facilities and attractiveness of these cities. That's why it is much more important that Konya self-promotes itself. Here we have to cooperate with all the universities, I would say, maybe not just limited to Konya, but also with Karaman and Aksaray and maybe some others, really to promote that region. What can we offer to these students? And the second problem in Konya is also that the student profile is less motivated than many other. They are not very motivated. They don't have the courage to go abroad. So we sometimes have to really push these students to be part of the mobility. So what do we do for the students? They can take part. Just to give a few examples, okay, there are lots of other things we are doing. So what we are trying to do to increase their mobility is that we start from very early on to communicate. Okay, we organize events to increase their awareness of the Erasmus program and what we are doing, what they can do with the program, so they have the time to prepare themselves. And also to prepare themselves in terms of improving their language skills. Often we come across with students, they're fourth graders or third graders, and they say, well, I want to go to Erasmus program. And then we ask, of course, what about your English or any other language? They say, no. Okay, so it's too late often for them to improve their language skills. So that's why we try to start from the very early period to raise their awareness, let's say. And we also work with student communities. We have an Erasmus community. Again, they help us with creating awareness. We organize speaking clubs for the students. And these clubs also, in a way, disseminate what we are doing. They spread the word about the Erasmus program. And we also try to widen the possibilities for students with internships. Okay, we have some extra programs and projects, so people go and do some form of internships abroad. And this also, besides from all the aspects I mentioned that benefits these students, their employability also increases thanks to these internships. And that's why we really try to send out as many students as possible. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, I would say. Okay. Thank you for the time. Thank you for your patience. I exceeded my time.
Thank you very much. Dr. Akın basically focused on the Erasmus program and the changing trends regarding the Erasmus program, especially Mevlana program was also very important. Once again, thank you very much for your contribution. And I would like to continue not only the last speaker of this session, but our whole workshop, Dr. Ömer Kavrar from Selçuklu University. And dear professor, you have 15 minutes. Please enjoy your time.
Thank you for the floor, and thank you very much for the invitation. It is a great pleasure to be here at the International Student Workshop. During these 2 days of workshop, academicians, international relations officers, and the representatives from civil society organizations have raised very important points. And they have also mentioned the fundamental challenges related to the international students. In this respect, there has been very little left for me to say as being the final speaker. However, with some experience abroad as an international student and almost 10 years of experience in international relations office, I have some points to make. And I will try to keep my speech as short as possible, as I believe people may be tired in this very last moment of these 2 days of intensive workshop. What I have observed overall from the presentation of this workshop so far is that in many universities, the internationalization procedures are carried out by a certain group of people at the institution, and they are far from spreading to the entire institution. I just want to mention to the audience that it will not be realistic to talk about equality in international study experience if this issue is not dealt with in all units of the universities. For example, what Murat Aslan said yesterday, the integration procedures of the international students are generally dealt with individual efforts. However, I believe all the participants would agree with me that this kind of support is not something we would like to carry out as part of our daily work, since it is not a sustainable procedure in the long run. At this point, I would like to highlight how important to form a comprehensive report with the inclusion of all the key stakeholders from this workshop. As Yusuf Sain has mentioned previously, that the outputs of this workshop will not be focused only on the city of Konya, but also will be shared to a wider community. And this is why I hope the policy suggestion of this meeting will be able to serve to the needs of more than 230,000 international students throughout Turkey. So once again, I would like to thank you very much for this organization. And now I would like to talk about a long-standing problem, which I believe quite relevant for the content of this workshop, which is the participation of Turkish scholarship students in another exchange programs of the universities they study in Turkey, such as Erasmus, Mevlana, and so on. So there are basically two opinions about it. On the one hand, some people tend to reject their participation to the exchange programs because they are already on a scholarship program which aims to host international students to give them an entire study experience in Turkey. Participating, let's say, to the Erasmus program would delay their adaptation procedures and negatively affect on their academic achievements and prevent the effective use of public resources such as Turkish scholarships. And last but not least, it should not be seen as an opportunity to migrate from east to the west, which we have experienced before. On the other hand, some people think that the international students should not be excluded from any program or opportunity because of equal rights and social inclusion principles. My opinion is in favor of the latter, which is to give them an opportunity that the Turkish students have, as long as they have a Turkish university student ID card. So this is a challenge with some question marks. So maybe some questions related to that will be included to the next survey study conducted by Sefa Usta and his colleagues. One of the discussion topic of this session is the new trends of the international education. Well, the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus throughout the world had a substantial impact on higher education, with almost all the institutions having closed their doors for face-to-face activities and replacing them with online courses. In parallel to this, new terms and methodologies in international education have emerged, such as virtual mobility and blended mobility. I will shortly tell you what they mean. Virtual mobility refers to students and teachers in higher education using another institution outside their own country to study or teach for a limited time without physically leaving their home. And blended mobility is a type of mobility that includes both physical and virtual mobility. For example, think of a student or a staff to have a short physical mobility blended with virtual mobility for one semester. So these are the new trends applied in the Europe, the USA, and Canada, and so on. Having said that, I would like to mention shortly on the new actors in international education. As Professor Branislav mentioned before, digitalization has become a crucial requirement for the higher education institution. So the new actors of international education and hosts for international students, in my opinion, are the ones who can take position to ensure that they are ready for the digital age. However, it is not an easy issue to overcome. According to a study, digitalization is a management process that includes 20% technological change and 80% change in human behavior. In other words, it is not enough to make your technological infrastructure 100% ready for digital transformation. It should also involve training and equipping the primary stakeholders of the institution with the digital skills. Organization culture at this point is crucial to the success of any digital initiative. Organizations should be open to change and be able to adapt quickly. Before giving the mic to the moderator, I must say that I was not given such an opportunity to raise our own problems in an organization like this one when I was a student in Australia. So I would like to thank once again to the organizing committee for this fruitful workshop. That's all from my side, and I'm happy to take questions at question and answer section. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this beautiful presentation, Dr. Cover. Cool. And this is something also normal, and also the role of the pandemic, which was also, I think, one of the newest trend in the education system, unfortunately. And we came to an end, but we have 20 minutes for questions and answers. And please, you can type your question, but please do not forget, I kindly ask you to mention the name of the professor to whom you are asking your question. And I'm taking the questions now.
Actually, there is a question in the chat box asking for the vision of Selçuklu University regarding to the student exchange.
Exactly, this question is for you.
Yeah, I don't think that is a topic of our workshop, but my short response to the question as a staff at the Erasmus Coordination Office would be very official. Selçuklu University aims to increase the number of inbound and outbound mobility flows, as well as the quality of the mobilities, by aiming to take a place in the European higher education area. So this answer was very official, and I would like to invite this student Hasib Amanat to our Erasmus office to give much more detailed information.
Thank you. Another question, please. I think yes.
No question, maybe.
No question. So I'm closing this session. Thank you very much, dear professors, and I'm giving the speech to my dear friend Yusuf Sayın. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yiğit Hocam, maybe we can give extra time to want to speak among our participants. Is there anyone to speak extra? No? Okay. Okay, then let's finish the meeting. 25 minutes later, inshallah, we will make our last session and we will close the meeting. Inshallah, we hope 25 minutes later. Thank you very much for everything and your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.